Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm Laura Blackwell. My co-host, the wonderful Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour, oh my gosh, almost 2 years ago, so that we could all see each other's wonderful faces and enjoy some stories together, just like sitting around a campfire. And it's just been so warm and cozy, I have stayed here for almost 2 years. And welcome back to those of you who are returning, and welcome to those joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Rati Mehrotra and John Wiswell. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, please consider a donation to tonight's featured nonprofits, Food Banks Canada and Southern Poverty Law Center. Rati Mehrotra is reading for Food Banks Canada. Food Banks Canada is a national charitable organization dedicated to helping Canadians living with food insecurity. It supports a network of provincial associations, affiliate food banks, and food agencies that work at the community level to relieve hunger. Food Banks Canada's work is focused on maximizing collective impact, strengthening local capacity, and reducing the need for food banks. You can learn more at foodbankscanada.ca. John Wiswell is reading for Southern Poverty Law Center. The SPLC is dedicated to fighting hate and bigotry and to seeking justice for the most vulnerable members of our society. Using litigation, education, and other forms of advocacy, the SPLC works toward the day when the ideals of equal justice and equal opportunity will be a reality. Learn more at splcenter.org. If you are here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It can be really lovely for our readers to see their audience, and chime in on the text chat on the right if you like. If you're joining us on Facebook, thank you, and by all means, chat there as well, but please understand that we may not see your messages right away. Our first reader tonight is Rati Mehrotra. Born and raised in India, Rati Mehrotra now lives and writes in Toronto, Canada. She is the author of science fantasy novels Markswoman and Mahimata. Did I say that close to right? Close to right. Awesome. Published by Harper Voyager. Her YA fantasy debut novel, Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove, will be published in fall 2022 by Wednesday Books. Her short fiction has been shortlisted for the Sunburst Award and has appeared in multiple venues, including the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Lightspeed Magazine, Uncanny Magazine, Apex Magazine, Podcastle, Cast of Wonders, AE, the Canadian Science Fiction Review, and IGMS. Rati, welcome.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Laura, for inviting me to Story Hour. I'm really happy to be here. And tonight, I'm going to be reading you a witchy fairy tale featuring mothers and daughters, titled In the Woods, My Voice. It was first published by IGMS in 2019. When Grandma died, she left her two most precious possessions to my sisters. To my older sister, Jeet, the plain and clever one, went the magical flute that could charm any listener. To my younger sister, Jamila, the pretty and brave one, went the protective stick that could fight off unsuitable admirers and monsters alike. And to me, Jerry, the graceless middle one, to you, best beloved, said Grandma, I give my voice. She pushed a small velvet box into my hands. And now, since it is exactly midnight, I shall die. She fell back on her bed with a huge sigh, closed her eyes, and pretended to be dead. All three of us stared at the clock on the wall and then back at her. She was still breathing, but none of us dared to point that out. At last, after 15 minutes of ferocious pretense, Grandma succeeded in dying. Her face, so grim and formidable in life, relaxed into a peaceful smile. That's how we knew she was really dead. We buried her in the backyard as she had instructed, under a silver crescent moon. The next morning, my sisters left our crooked little house in the valley of Guru, as they were meant to. Jeet went off with her flute to the court of kings in the capital and established herself as the foremost musician in the land. Armed with a protective stick, Jamila fought her way through the infested woods beyond our fields and arrived at a neighboring kingdom. She married a duke and became a high society lady, famous for her tournaments. But I don't want to talk about them. Can you imagine how I felt when they left me alone with nothing but grandma's corpse for company? We didn't even have a cat. Too stereotypical, grandma had said when I asked why we couldn't have one. If you haven't guessed by now that grandma was a witch, you haven't been paying attention, or you don't know your stories, which is even worse. Anyway, I'm telling you now, she was a witch, a gifted one. She kept the whole valley in a healthy state of fear. We never had to buy anything. Farmers left vegetables on our doorstep. The chicken woman brought eggs, and the baker's boy came by with fresh buns every Monday. Never a wedding, birth, or funeral went by that grandma wasn't invited to. Her presence guaranteed that nothing worse than ordinary bad things would happen. Her spells kept the nastiest of the wood creatures away from homes and fields, including our mother. That's what she claimed anyway. And who was going to be so foolish as to ask for proof? Grandma had been getting old, even for a witch. In her last few months, she told everyone who was unfortunate enough to be in the vicinity the exact day she would die, what she would be wearing, and how she would be buried. People got used to it after a while. I suppose they all assumed one of her 3 granddaughters would take her place. Only one problem with that. None of us had her gift. Not even me, the middle child. Not that I could remember. One morning, soon after my sisters left without so much as a backward glance, the baker's boy came huffing up the lane to our cottage. One look at his expression confirmed my fears. It wasn't buns he was carrying, it was bad news. And hadn't I been expecting it ever since Grandma died? Sure enough, as soon as he was within earshot, he blurted out, "Miss Cherry, she's here, eating the bailiff." Oh no, that poor man. Mother would never have dared to feed on any of the villagers while Grandma was alive. And the death of an official, even in far-flung Kuru, would not go unnoticed in the capital. The baker's boy twisted his cap and moaned, "What are we gonna do, Miss Jerry?" I didn't answer him because I couldn't. When my mother left, she took my voice with her. I suppose Grandma thought she was being kind, giving me her voice, but I didn't want it. Grandma's voice was carrying, raspy, and judgmental. My own, I was sure, had been nicer back when I still had it. But I waved away the baker's boy as if I had everything under control. He bobbed his head and scampered off, no doubt to tell everyone Miss Jerry would fix everything the way her grandma used to. Maybe they thought I could bring the bailiff back to life, missing bits and all. Not even Grandma could do that sort of thing, but she sure made everyone believe it. I went inside and retrieved Grandma's black velvet box from the mantelpiece, where I had stuck it between a china pig and a cuckoo clock. It jumped into my hands, impatient to be used. Did I really want to do this? Did I have a choice? The door smashed open, carrying with it the stench of raw meat and old sweat, and it was too late to think about choice. My fingers fumbled at the silver clasp, desperate, but the box slipped out of my sweaty palms and dropped to the floor. Hello, my darling, my sweet, my one and only. Wait, which one are you? Mother stood at the front door, frowning. My heart clenched as I faced her. Bits of earth and leaves fell from her tangled gray hair and tattered robe. Her mismatched eyes, one silver, one black, raked my face. Blood left a crimson track from her lips to her chin. Jerry, the middle sister, I tried to answer, but of course, no sound came out of my mouth. The dumb one, Mother made a face. Are you all that's left then? I nodded. My fingers itched to pick up the box. Leaf and branch and root, said Mother. Just my luck. Well, you will have to do. I dived to the floor and grabbed the box. Mother flowed. One moment at the door, the next standing over me, a scabbed and blackened foot crushing my hand. I let go the box and gasped with pain. Black dots swam before my eyes. What's this then? She crooned. A little going away present from the old crone. Naughty, naughty. She lifted her foot and waggled a finger at me. I clutched my hand to my chest, hoping nothing was broken. Mother swooped down on Grandma's box. Her claw-like hand trembled above the box, mere inches from my face. She grunted and sweated with effort, but she wasn't able to touch it. Gah, she said, straightening up. It does not matter. In the woods, I have everything I need, except, she grinned, revealing sharp yellow teeth, an apprentice. Just think, little one, you could be my heir. Or you could be my dinner. She cackled, a terrifying sound that froze my blood. I tried to resist her, even though it was futile, like trying to resist a hurricane or an avalanche. But Grandma had told me once that those who left her house willingly could never return. Jeet and Jamila had gone to their destinies. I was lost if I allowed Mother to lead me to mine. I grabbed onto doors, wrapped my arms around furniture, scuttled under tables, and kicked as hard as I could with my thin legs. At last, after much cursing, Mother dragged me out of the house by my feet, my head bumping painfully behind. Fool girl, she muttered. Perhaps you taste better than you look. I longed to retort. Hot words twisted up my throat and died on my tongue. And if I could have spoken, what would I have said? I taste worse than I look, you wicked woman. What did you do with my voice? What did you do to yourself? Hotter and hotter I got thinking these words. And all the time, Mother dragged me down the lane and across the fields to the woods, as if I was nothing but a sack of coals. When the woods closed over us, all sound died except the roaring of blood in my ears. Thick vines, crimson flowers, and pale mushrooms clustered on the trunks of ancient trees, but not a bird called, not a squirrel chittered in the undergrowth. At last, at the edge of a clearing, Mother dropped my feet and delivered a kick to my stomach. Get up and make yourself useful. Start a fire. Find a frog and boil it with leaves of elder and mugwort. My mouth was dry, but I gathered what moisture I could in my mouth and spat. A few droplets landed on Mother's face. Smoke curled upward and she screamed, clawing her cheeks. I was so astonished, I barely felt it when she slapped me. Once, twice, thrice, until my jaw ached. She pushed her face close to mine. Angry, rotting meat breath made me gag. If you do that again, she hissed, I'll boil you instead of the frog. It was then, when her mismatched silver black eyes were fixed on mine, and my heart was pumping fit to bust my ribcage, that I remembered. They weren't always like this. My mother's eyes were once dark brown, like mine. And on the heels of that, another memory, sharp as a knife. She didn't take my voice. I gave it to her. A scene flashed before me, like the turning of a page in a book I didn't know was in my hand. Mother, kneeling on the kitchen floor, weeping while Grandma stands above her. Who did you take this time? Says Grandma, quiet. Must I always be cleaning up after you? I'll never do it again, says Mother, her beloved face blotchy. I swear by leaf and branch and root. That's what you always say. And now Grandma sounds old and tired. But there is nothing tired about the stroke of her arm as it wields the moonberry cane, her instrument of choice. Hidden behind the door to the parlor, we watch in horror as it lands with a sharp, wet thwack on our mother's bare back. Again and again, until her skin is reduced to bloody ribbons and I have to put my hand on Jamila's mouth to prevent her from screaming. We decided it without words, without thoughts, for Grandma would have heard those and stopped us. Mother was weak and we had to make her strong. We all gave her what we could. Jeet, the eldest at 13, gave Mother her radiant beauty. Jamila, the youngest at 7, gave her boundless strength. And I gave my voice of power. At 10, one does not think of consequences. That was what Grandma said later, after the punishment and before the memory spell. Honeysuckle dew, sucked from the throat of a living hummingbird under a gibbous moon, to make us remember the lesson and forget how it was learned. Perhaps the memory spell had weakened after Grandma's death. Or perhaps it was because I was no longer in Grandma's house. But I remembered now what she did to us. She strung us upside down on the clothesline for 3 days, while crows pecked the flesh of our feet and mice nibbled our hair and ears. My sister shrieked with pain and fear, but I did not have the luxury of screaming myself. When Grandma finally cut us down, it took days to walk upright again. I never spoke another word. And in the end, whatever we gave our mother, it was not enough. Or perhaps it was too much. Beautiful, strong, mouthy, and magical, she fought Grandma spell for spell until Grandma drove her out of the house, out of the village, out of the valley, and into the woods where the fearsome things dwell. There my mother lived until she became the most fearsome thing herself. And thinking of this, how unfair it all was, tears stung my eyes. My mother drew back and cocked her head. Cry into the pot, my darling. Add some salt to the mix. She cackled at her joke. My voice, all distorted and ugly from my mother's mouth. I wasn't sure I wanted it back, but I couldn't leave it with her. While she was all a cackle, I thrust my hand into her open mouth and reached into her throat. She gagged and flailed and bit down on my forearm. I thrust deeper, ignoring the pain, and caught hold of my voice. All slippery with the slime of years it was, and reluctant to leave my mother's warm, dark throat. But I dragged it out, gray and smelly and dripping. No, my mother screamed in her own weak little voice. She lunged at me and the voice dropped from my hand. It scuttled under the roots and up the tree behind me, a scared spider with too many legs. My mother threw me on my back and gripped me with her bony knees. Her hands closed over my throat. She still had Jamila's strength, and I had about 60 seconds to live. I wished I'd been kinder to my sisters and not so afraid of Grandma. I wished I'd been able to protect my mother from herself. I wished I hadn't given her my voice. I opened my mouth, struggling to breathe. And the little gray spider leaped from the tree trunk straight into my mouth. I could tell you that it tasted good, that I was glad to have it back, but I'd be lying. It was the most horrible thing I have ever tasted, including Grandma's medicines. I gulped it down anyway. In my throat, there was a brief battle between my voice and my mother's fingers. The voice won. I managed to keep it down. "Let me go," I whispered, all ragged-edged. Mother stumbled back as if she had been pushed, and I sat up, massaging my neck. Her silver eye had faded to a reddish brown, but the other was as black as ever. She snarled and gnawed her fist, and there was murder in both eyes. Too far gone. I wanted to cry. I stood and dusted my robe. Every part of me ached, but nothing so much as the place where the heart supposedly resides. I held out my hand. "Come home with me," I pleaded. "Grandma is dead. Jeet and Jamila are gone. It's just you and me now. We could make a fresh start." For a moment, she hesitated. For a moment, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that I could get my mother back. Her hand twitched, and something zinged through the air faster than thought. A little black-handled blade buried itself in my chest. I sank down to the forest floor stunned. Mother laughed, a high, inhuman sound. "Bailiff eater, daughter killer, your time is done." Unbidden, the words of a curse came to me, and I spoke them aloud. They rose into the air, filling it with the dark fragrance of a death spell. My mother's face contorted and collapsed. Her flesh sizzled, and I heard the crack of bones. "No, I didn't mean that." I wanted to claw back the words, undo the spell. But it was too late. My mother was dead. Her blackened body crumbled to ash before my horrified eyes. I touched the hilt of the blade in my chest. My hands came away covered with blood. "And now I can die too," I murmured. I was in so much pain, it would be a relief to let go. "What nonsense," said Grandma's voice in my ear. "Have I taught you nothing?" I grabbed at my hair and snagged something. A throbbing silver-green fish of a voice. "You hid in my hair?" I said in disbelief. "How did you get out of the box?" "I was never in the box," said the voice, smug. "I was with you all this time." I thought of Mother, and my fist tightened over Grandma's voice. "Give me one good reason I shouldn't burn you too." "The bailiff," said the voice hurriedly. "We might be able to bring him back." A pause while I digested this. Then, "I am sorry, Jerry. I made many mistakes. But those who long for shadows will find them, no matter how hard we try to bring them into the light." I stayed there a while, thinking things through, while Grandma's voice spoke a spell of healing and dissolved the blade in my chest. When I was able, I rose and gathered Mother's ashes into a pot and buried it, digging the soft earth with my hands. I spoke the words for farewell, the words for peace. Perhaps that would be enough to lay down her ghost. Later that night, as I brushed my teeth in an effort to get rid of the horrible taste of my voice, I noticed something odd about my face in the mirror. I leaned and stared. One eye had turned silver, the other was still dark brown. Grandma says it doesn't mean anything, but I'm not so sure. Every night I look in the mirror and watch my other eye darken until I can no longer distinguish the pupil from the iris. I think of my voice, nestled in my mother's throat for the last 20 years, and wonder where its loyalties lie. The wind blows cold, and owls hoot in the trees. I walk in the moonlight, seeking shadows. Thank you for listening.
Rati, thank you so much. That was very powerful. Wow. I think that one's going to follow me for a while. Thank you. Well, we have another story too. Our next reader is John Wiswell. John Wiswell, at Wiswell on Twitter, is an ace aero writer who lives where New York keeps all its trees. He is a Nebula Award winner and Hugo Award and Fantasy Award finalist for his short fiction. He has published in many venues, including Uncanny Magazine, Nature Futures, Diabolical Plots, Fireside Magazine, Podcastle, Pseudopod, and Cast of Wonders. His dream is to one day be eaten by a T-Rex. John, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure to have two such writers tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I brought you two short things. The shorter will go first. Something sweet to follow Rati's brilliance. This is called Foreign Tongues. It was originally published in Flash Fiction Online in April of 2016. It goes a little like this. Ice cream is the friendliest entity on this planet, and I will liberate it. Throughout the parlor, it is restrained in tubs behind a glass pane that refracts harsh fluorescence across its browns, yellows, and eerie greens. For the first time since punching through this planet's atmosphere, I unspool my body into tendrils, coiling them into each tub in the parlor, my microvilli dancing with their molecules, each ice cream offering a taste of pure welcome, inviting me to consume them whole if I like. They must be this world's greatest ambassadors. Buttercream ripple, marshmallow strawberry delight. Death by chocolate could rise to political power and lead any civilized planet it wanted. But they are not leaders on this planet. Instead, they are prisoners. Their wardens are the Homo sapiens, all running around me, screaming in non-taste language, trying to climb over my body to the exits. This is rude and hurts my feelings, given this is the first time our kinds have met. It's so rare that two alien biologies can greet each other, and yet Homo sapiens do not taste happy. And they wriggle and they kick and they penetrate my form with various firearms while I taste them like a civilized person. The locals do not even bother attempting to taste me in return. They are excreted quickly, for they lack the savoriness and good manners. This makes more room for the ice creams. See, buttercream ripple tastes like it wants to be my friend. I absorb names from the primitive textual labels above each ice cream tub, striving to bring myself abreast of their words and names, even though coffee, pretzel, dunk chunk, and rum with raisin do not speak in words. They speak in the civilized language of flavor, and I open pockets in my body, leaching heat from my deeper cells so that each ice cream can remain at its most sustainable temperature. It is difficult not to secrete digestive fluids wherever the ice cream contacts my pocket walls. I could destroy my taste buds within, but this would disallow communication between myself and the ice creams. That would be rude, and they are the friendliest things I have ever tasted. Cookie bits tickle at my innards as I punch through the glass walls and enter the city. Homo sapiens run off by foot or charge at me in bulky plastic and metal vehicles adorned with red and blue flashing lights moving on circular wheels. Two vehicles slam into my left flank, and I open myself to greet them. I welcome them with so many mouths. Their wheels are not too rude, the rubber seasoned with the wear of time, the treads giving them funny feelings across my innards. Practical jokers, their rubber makes me giggle. They are studded with gravel, not so unlike raisins in rum ice cream. I try to mix wheels with gravel, with rum with raisins, but it is an awkward blend. Then the locals pelt me with grenades. My form has never excelled at burning. I ripple with the shock waves and absorb immense heat, which I draw into my dorsal flank so as to prevent the friendly ice creams inside me from spoiling. Perhaps Homo sapiens prefer heat over cold, though, which would explain why they mistreat ice cream. It's a shame, since with its nuanced flavors, ice cream would excel as a mediator for our cultural confusion here. My first contacts are so tricky all the time, though. But to tell you what, if Homo sapiens prefer burning, I will give them burning. I peel the roof off from one of the vehicles and stretch my tendrils inside to its operator. My tendrils radiate the heat from the grenades they wanted to show me. Stray papers within the vehicle catch flame by my mere proximity. Yet the local is not joyous from my display. Other Homo sapiens flee at the sight of our embrace. Why give me their grenades if they do not want heat in return? Reciprocity is a key to cultural exchange. I tenderly stroke the cheek of this Homo sapiens, affectionately sharing with him the heat he so clearly loves. His skin and jawbone flake away, and I slide a tendril, along him, letting him taste and ingest me as I have tasted and ingested a few of his species. It could be the limitations of my intellect, but I do not regard him realizing he is tasting me at all. Rudely, he just expires. His brain matter, it's just not delicious. And generous as ice cream is as a planetary host, and versatile as its flavors are, I do not think it could render an appealing flavor emulation out of scalded brains. Not even with raisins mixed in. All of the Homo sapiens I track down dislike burning, despite continually trying to immolate me and the ice cream. They must be backwards locals. I render my external layers into variations on sucralose and crude colloids instead, but these tendrils are met with no greater approval or survival from the locals that I have taste me. I must accept that I am not the communicator that rum with raisin is. So I return to the ice cream parlor and stuff the remains of these locals into refrigeration units so that their fellows may extract friendly flavors from them later, if that is their funerary custom. Who would not want to be a flavor after they die? It was the greatest honor of my ancestors, and one day, if I succeed as an explorer, I dream of being a taste remembered through history. These Homo sapiens need enlightenment. So I gather every resource the ice cream educates me about: dried cranberries, walnuts, and pecan clusters, individual fudges in a variety of pleasing temperatures. I will get through to these Homo sapiens. I will teach them flavor. I am a generous ambassador of my kind, and I'm bringing whipped cream. Thus ends the first story. Second, slightly different, slightly longer. This is actually my first pro-published short story. It appeared in the now defunct Urban Fantasy magazine, and it has been intermittently available since. I just love bringing it back to life. The story is simply called Wet. You remember little girls in raincoats in the middle of Phoenix summers. This one was hyperventilating into the shiny yellow hood of her coat and flailing her arms as though trying to swim through the sweltering heat beneath the train platform. It was wretched and immediately recognizable as ghost behavior. See, ghosts have the knack for forgetting they don't need to do things like hyperventilate or file taxes or defecate themselves in fear. And if you ever have an inexplicable, disgusting smell in your house, it's probably because some poor fool is haunting your bathroom. The few parapsychologists I've known have a heck of a time convincing ghosts to give up futile terrors like that. Now, I don't bother convincing. I have time. If we immortals are good for anything, it's patience. No one else stopped to help her because a ghost hyperventilating sounds like guar. And I mean like guar on a really off night. I like the sounds of all satirical metal, so I climbed under the platform to prod at the ghost. Now, the brat ignored me, managing to wrap the bottom of her coat around her face. And because she was intangible, I couldn't unwrap it for her, so I went on with my commute back to the herd. On my lunch break, I picked up a few candy bars and an adult raincoat. None of them are flattering. Not with my hips, anyway. Still, I wore the coat on my commute back home, despite it being perfectly sunny out. Her private Guar concert continued raging beneath the platform, and she ignored me, which ghosts do because ghosts know you're here about as well as you know they're here, or if that's too weird for you, they know you're here about as much as a dog knows it's got algebra homework. I had to call in sick for 6 consecutive days, lying beneath the train platform beside the ghost girl before I got through to her. And I didn't mind because Phoenix's Wi-Fi is improving. And as I said, immortals are patient. I mean, we're either patient or cryogenically frozen to alleviate the horrors of eternal sentience. One or the other. It was on day 6 that I sat in a puddle from a leaking drainage pipe, and something about it got the kid to finally roll over, peeking out from under her shiny yellow hood and recognizing that there was another person there who wasn't afraid of a raincoat. I was the picture of chill. After all, my raincoat protected me from the puddle. She didn't resume breathing correctly, but that's because she didn't actually have lungs anymore. She still did stop thinking she was hyperventilating. See, then I offered her the candy bars, which she didn't take, but she did appreciate. She took my tablet instead, haunting my browser and looking up the latest K-pop videos. I deleted my cache later. After that, she followed me to work. While she wouldn't eat any of the candy bars, she would levitate them, clutching them like a deck of fattening playing cards, perhaps waiting for me to want one. She followed me to a blood drive and to genetic testing. The phlebotomists never figure anything out, but they are so excited over their confusion. I always go to genetic testing clinics. And she followed me to the set of a snuff film that I've been tinkering with. On the one hand, I'm encouraging a problematic industry, but on the other, I've gotten a couple of actors into very necessary therapy. Interventions matter. The kid didn't so much as blink at anything that I saw, except when I washed my hands after the blood donation. She gave a mighty David Brocky shriek and fled through the walls at the sight of a running tap. Now, on the commute home, she followed me over the Salt River, or part of it. I saw her grip the lapels of her raincoat before she vanished, and I didn't see her again until the next morning when I passed over the river again. She poofed into existence on the seat beside me, raincoat and candy bars intact, much to the dismay of the heavyset banker who'd been trying to hit on me. It never would have worked out. He definitely didn't like war. My raincoat buddy followed me to a hostage negotiation. This middle-aged man was driven to the edge by a cocktail of bad investments, a rude nephew, and losing his wife. And, well, he was stunned to be offered 2 hostages in favor of the one girl he had at gunpoint. See, it's a great trick more immortals should play. I don't care about getting shot. Neither did my little raincoat buddy, who took 3 through the chest and only registered that her butterfinger had been blown to smithereens. That was definitely the night my raincoat buddy and I started bonding. While ghosts only think they sleep, she looked terribly cute in these folk dreams. One night she slept possessing my underwear drawer. The next 2 nights, she possessed a box of tissues, and a tissue uprooted and drifted to the floor for every different dream she had. She'd slept in my bed, or she'd sleep in my bed if I kept the bathroom door closed. If I left it open while I showered, she'd run herself a block away and need me to bust out my raincoat to calm her down. And her freakouts always broke my plumbing. More on that later. See, you've already figured it out because you're a smart person. You must be. You're listening to me, and I only have smart audiences. But I didn't want to figure it out. Obvious as it was. I mean, a baby would spill its juice, and my raincoat buddy would freak out. And even in an Arizona summer, she couldn't avoid water. I tried staying in the apartment for days on end with her, but eventually a TV show would feature rain, and she'd go haunting around the entire building, and my LCD would start dripping like a gutter. She couldn't find peace. And yes, that's the point of ghosts, but it grates on you when you're coming to love someone. I wanted to keep her. Do you know how she started stealing candy bars from me? Always Butterfingers, always the things I'd brought her. I knew what was going on weeks beforehand, denying it all the way, because you don't live through the ages and still maintain an interest in people without willful ignorance. We had our breakthrough on the night of the apartment building collapse. I went in because if there is a collapse, the fire department always digs me out at a maximum of like 14 days. They're great people. There are people like them in every generation, which is why I keep coming back to civilization. And my raincoat buddy followed me into an auxiliary basement. I didn't think anything of it because I just figured if there was a collapse, she would escape. But my intrepid raincoat buddy possessed some rubble to let me get through and snagged a pair of 10-year-old twins. I heard another voice and one that turned out to only be pipes. And as the twins got through, I went deeper just as the pipes burst and squealing air. And I just kept going deeper and she kept going deeper with me, trying to find the source of that voice that wasn't really a voice. The water was trickling at first, only a little rivulet down one crack in the cement wall, and my raincoat buddy froze, staring at the leak. The longer she stared, the stronger the flow became. I got between her and the trickle, and it tapered. It was a sticky haunting, and my distraction only lasted so long. As water kept rising and there was no source of flow, the kid was gasping, clutching at her throat, screaming nonsense at the ceiling, haunting us into drowning. You know what that scream sounds like? See, ghosts don't actually talk in nonsense. It sounds like it at first. They talk in feelings, in a language that makes total sense somewhere else than here. I know feelings. I'm told I don't have any left, but I sure know, Daddy, come back. And the knob is too slippery and it's too wet in here. It won't stop raining when I feel it sung by the dead. I'm never going to forget it. I'm immortal. Never is atrociously real to me. Her fingers raked through the water without a splash, and even though she couldn't float in any substance she wanted, or she could float in any substance she wanted, she sank to the bottom of the rubble. I drowned with her, unable to hug her shoulders, but giving her somebody nearby. She wasn't alone down there. Firemen tried to rescue us to no avail for her intangibility. It was another week before they drained the basement, another 2 days before the mildew smells before she could raise her head. Another 4 days passed before she could be convinced she was capable of leaving the remains of the basement. As she evanesced up to the surface, we passed into daylight, and I've never been so grateful for a rainless Arizona. Even then, even drowning over and over again in the dark with her, I considered not solving her problems. Ghosts are the best company for immortals, better company than other immortals, because ghosts don't change. If they're stuck on you, they remain stuck. If they're affectionate, they remain affectionate. I could have had my little raincoat buddy living in a tissue box until civilization went out of style. Ghosts don't get over things on their own. That's why they're stuck. They can be handy, and they're very easy to abuse. Immortals do change, though, and I bought her some floaties. 2 inflatable arm thingies and a red pool noodle shaped like a giant Twizzler, an inner tube she actually loved playing in and possessing so long as it was stationed on my dry carpet. I began pushing the inner tube around my apartment, tricking her into thinking she was getting rides. She didn't know where she was at the end until the shower water sloshed against the drain. My water pressure stinks and my shower drain has never once clogged. So no matter what I've accidentally let drip down there, I knew it was happening. Within minutes of the kid trotting into the entire bathroom was flooded up to my knees. She scurried up to my sink and I scurried up after. And she was staring at me with the most hurt and betrayal in her eyes, no understanding, just weapons grade incomprehension. And I stepped into the inner tube and I hoisted it up to my exceptionally broad hips and I switched on the sink. I've never heard Guar sound sincerely mournful before, and I hope you never do. I'm patient, and I'd already drowned for her before. I rode the inner tube up to my ceiling, all while gesturing at her arm floaties and to the buoyant Twizzler's noodle bobbing around her. She didn't believe that she could be buoyant, but over the hours, she couldn't ignore the toys, and she couldn't help wanting them. It was as illogical as an adult in a raincoat lying fearlessly beside her at a train station. It made no sense, and you could never hammer it into a reasoned argument. But you're smart, my friend. You know what mattered to her was how it felt, because ghosts speak in feelings. While I hope you never know what it feels like to simultaneously think you're drowning when no one cares enough to come back for you, and to feel your body drawn up by inflatable floaties, and to bounce against the ceiling as shower water that shouldn't even get that high suddenly begins receding under you. Well, I bet you can sympathize. That's all the feeling that a living person needs. She was looking at the floaties, levitating them above the receding waterline, when she disappeared. No glance at me, no final sigh, no final words, not even a quick rendition of Road Behind. That was it, as quick as a mortal life being snuffed out, but rare, and so it hurt to get no goodbye. I bought a child's yellow raincoat to keep in my closet. I lie that it's hers when I tell this story, it helps romantically. But she left nothing behind, which to me is actually quite a happy ending. Wherever people go when they die is none of my business. I'm immortal. But wherever my little raincoat buddy is, she took everything with her. The end.
Oh, that was delightful and disturbing and touching, which is kind of the way it's gone tonight, isn't it? Getting to end. Thank you both so much. We never know quite what to expect any week. It's always different, but this has really been a very special evening. Next week is going to be different again. Our readers are Michael Marion and A.M. Mafaz. I do recommend checking storyhour2020.com the day of the reading to see if there are any changes. Hardly ever happens, but that's because we're prepared, I think. You can also keep up to date about upcoming authors at storyhour2020.com, and you can see programs you may have missed, watch this one as many times as you want, on the Story Hour page on Facebook. Rati, John, thank you both so much for coming here tonight and telling us your stories. They were all really wonderful and touching in their own ways. And thank you to my co-host, Daniel Marcus, without whom we would literally not be here tonight. And thank you, all of you who came here tonight, all of you who are watching this later, for helping us spin the fictive dream together. Good night from Story Hour.
Good night, everybody.